Hi, everyone, and welcome to Small Town Big Business, a podcast about doing big business in rural Middle America. I'm your co-host for today, Deb Barnett. I'm also the executive director for Southern Illinois Now, where we focus on economic development in the 17 southernmost counties in Illinois and advance our region as a great place to live, work, and do business.
And I'm Russell Williams. I'm director of Ethos. We're a small business incubator, co-working spaces, training and development here in downtown Marion, Illinois. We're right here in the Citadel building on Tower Square Plaza. And we also want to thank our sponsors for making the Small Town Big Business podcast possible. Thank you to Arcadia Wealth Group, Black Diamond Harley Davidson and RV, Fowler Heating and Cooling, the Swinford Media Group, the Watermark Auto Group Foundation, Banterra Bank, and also Southern Illinois Now.
I am so excited about today's conversation. First of all, welcome, Sam Kuhnert.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so happy to have you here today. So we're going to jump right in, and I want to have you share a little bit with the listeners about who you are, where you're from, and NubAbility. What is that all about? How did it get started?
Yes, ma'am. So I was born and raised in Quoin, Illinois. I was always loves for sports, and because of how I was born, missing my left hand, sports wasn't something that people thought that I should be into. You know, they kind of felt like, well, eventually he's going to be done with this. But I had such a passion for sport, and I refused to listen to anybody who said I couldn't. And I was very blessed to have the family that I did, where my mom instilled in me at an early age that you can do anything you put your mind to, or in the case of scripture, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, which to me meant you can endure anything. You can endure the doubt, you can endure the disbelief, you can endure the bullying, anything you faced, you just kept moving forward. And so I never listened to the doubt, whether it was T-ball into coach's pitch, into kids' pitch. In middle school, after I was cut from my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade baseball team, literally 3 years in a row, that's something that a lot of people would quit. A lot of people would give up.
They might quit after the 6th and 7th, let alone 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Exactly. But for me, it was like, nobody can define my story except for me and God. And I felt like I was on a trajectory. I had a path. I just needed to stick with it and work for it. You know, I wanted to be, whenever that coach on the other team was giving the speech about the kid across town who was outworking everybody, I wanted to be that kid. I wanted to be the one who, no matter who stepped in the batter's box for me, because baseball was my go-to sport, even though I played multiple, whoever stepped in that batter's box, they hadn't prepared the way that I had prepared. And when I finally got my opportunity my freshman year, it was an opportunity like no other, because it's a day that sticks with me even to this day as a 31, soon to be 32-year-old man. I remember I showed up to the ballpark. I had finally made my freshman baseball team. We had already played probably 10 to 11 games that year, and we were playing up against Nashville. And for our age group, Nashville was very, very talented and had actually beaten our local teams like a drum the last few years. And so a lot of teams were kind of afraid of Nashville. They were the corn-fed farm boys, hop off the bus, dipping their lip, look like they're ready to hit the ball a country mile, that kind of team. And I showed up to the ballpark, and I started playing catch, and Coach came at me and said, "Kuhnert, you're throwing today." And I was pumped. I was like, okay.
As a
freshman.
Wow.
It's like, finally, I'm going to get my opportunity. So I get out there, and I start popping the glove, and I really start feeling good. I'm like, okay, here we go. We're ready. As I'm about to transition to off the mound to head to the dugout, I overhear my coaches talking. Well, we might as well throw Kuhnert at him because we're going to lose anyway. And,
wow.
You can have two mindsets when people say that you can't do something. You can listen, you can give up, you can let their perception win, or you can take all of their doubt and disbelief and kind of turn it into a fuel. And what that coach didn't know is he didn't know that I was working 4 hours at home stacking cans on top of a dumpster until I could hit every single can in a row before I'd go inside. So putting 3 to 4 hours of work in after practice, to the point where my parents literally had to come and drag me inside to make me go to bed, because I wanted to be that pitcher. I wanted to be somebody, whenever I stepped on the mound, people knew it wasn't the one-handed pitcher, it was the pitcher that was out there. And we went out that day and beat Nashville 1-0. And then my high school career has kind of been similar to that. My sophomore year was very similar, threw against the teams that we were supposed to get beat by, beat them. Junior year, earned a lot of relief time as a reliever in lots of close game situations with teams from up by Chicago that came down to us, to local conference teams. Coaches would throw me in situations that you needed strikes, and I'd come in there and I'd deliver. And because of that delivery, local news started covering, because it's the one-handed pitcher. And so that was kind of, even though I hated that title, it was kind of what brought people to me. And when that happened, one of those stories actually reached an organization called Camp No Limits out in Chesterfield, Missouri, which was a nonprofit that taught limb-different kids, both community, surrounded them with kids like themselves, and then everyday life skills that a lot of people take for granted, like tying your shoes, buttoning shirts, along with fun items, like swimming and different yard games and stuff. And they had heard my story, and they're like, how would you like to come and learn sports? Well, for me growing up, I actually had a mentor who looked like me, and I remember how powerful that was. I had Shane Boyette, who was an outstanding tight end for Quoin High School, won the state championship with the Quoin High School football team, held records for most receptions, went and played at Missouri Baptist University. But for me, Shane was the guy who I went to when I was struggling with bullying. He was the guy I went to in fourth grade when I still couldn't tie my shoes, and helped me really learn how to adapt to life. And I realized that mentorship was so important. And to have the opportunity to come and give that back to somebody, I jumped at, because for me, it was Shane Boyette and Jim Abbott. Jim Abbott's who I grew up watching. It's how I molded my pitching style. I remember sitting on my dad's lap with a gallon of milk at 4 years old, sitting there and watching him throw a no-hitter for the New York Yankees. And I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget seeing a man out there, even as I continue to watch him growing up, seeing this guy out there at the highest level, proving everybody wrong, which gave me the confidence to do that. And so now, getting told that I have this opportunity to pour back into these kids what I've gotten, it was a no-brainer for me. And so I traveled to Chesterfield, Missouri. It was at like a YMCA type campground in Chesterfield. Got there, surrounded myself with the families, and I kind of wanted to know, who are these kids, where they come from, and what sports they play. What I was expecting to hear was, I'm Tony, I play baseball, soccer, football. Hey, I'm Jimmy, I play baseball, basketball, volleyball, I play golf. I was expecting multiple sports to come from these kids. What I got instead was, hi, I'm Timmy, I play soccer. Hi, I'm Jimmy, I play soccer. Hi, I'm Billy, I play soccer. Now, in Quoin at that time, soccer was a sin. But that wasn't what really got me. What got me was every single kid only said one sport. And to me, that hurt. Because what that told me was these kids were being subjected to one sport and pushed towards one sport out of fear of failure. And I actually talked to a parent. I said, why is your child being subjected to one sport? And she said, we feel like if we push them towards this sport, they have a greater chance of success and they won't fail. Which to me didn't sit right, because our failures aren't meant to be obstacles. They're not meant to be walls that prevent us from reaching something. They're meant to be steps. Every step is a new step towards success. And sometimes you fall back a couple steps, but it's about having the grit and grind to keep climbing those steps so that you can reach it. And I could tell that as a 17-year-old jock who got seized just to play baseball in high school, I could tell I wasn't getting through to the mom. So thankfully, since my mom didn't trust me to cross state lines as a Southern Illinois teen, probably a good idea. Thankfully, she was there, and I said, Mom, get these parents away from me. I said, just get them away from me. Let me work with the kids. And my mom, being the angel she was, she put together a 2-hour raising a limb different athlete forum off the cuff, off the top of her head, got the parents gathered into one building, and I went and taught kids how to throw and catch a baseball, how to throw and catch a football, how to dribble and shoot a basketball,
At age
how to
17?
swing a golf club. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And raw God-given talent was being exposed, and I could realize that it was just absolutely going to waste out of fear of failure. And so that night was a night that I'll never forget. One, it was 110 degrees in there. I was the only male counselor in this cabin, and I was trying to sleep. There was no sleep happening. Sweat was dripping and evaporating. Like, it was that type of heat. And I kept hearing this voice in my head, and it kept saying, "You can change this." Mm-hmm. And at first, I'm like, I don't know what this is. Why do I keep hearing this? I can't change this. I'm a get degrees type player. I'm in school to play sports. Like, I could change them, their skill set, but I don't know how I can change this. But I kept hearing it, and I'd heard it all night long until about 4:30 when I finally got about an hour of sleep. Then I had to get on the road because I had a baseball game the next day in Elkville where we were playing El Dorado, and I was supposed to be on the mound. And I remember we pulled out of the campgrounds, pulled down the highway, then pulled on to the interstate. And when we pulled onto the interstate, this vision popped in my head of a camp where kids with limb differences and amputees got to learn to play mainstream organized sports from coaches who look like them. So they get a mentor who looks like them to push them and provide them no excuses because they had done it, and give them all of the knowledge that they had gained through their experience back to these kids at a younger age, propelling them forward from where we were at. And I told my mom that, and she said one of the most powerful statements that I've heard to this day. She says, "Sam, I would have driven you across the country to have gotten you in front of you when you were cut from your 6th, 7th,
That's
8th grade
powerful.
baseball team."
Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
And instead of, just shushing it aside as a vision, my mom jumped full bore with me. We started the process of becoming a nonprofit, but I still had to finish my senior year of high school. And for me, baseball was where I wanted to be. I felt like I could play college baseball. I had actually asked my coach my junior year, right before this camp, I said, "Coach, I know I'm not ready, but what do I need to do to play college baseball?" And he looked at me, and this was my pitching coach. He was actually my freshman baseball coach as well. And he said, "Sammy, you throw the ball pretty hard, but there's not many one-handed baseball players in college baseball. So I think you should just focus on those last couple of years." And again, it's somebody else's perception. We're always going to have other people's perceptions on what we're capable of, but the only perception that matters is our own and God's, and his perception is way greater for us than we could ever imagine. And so I decided to go to work. I decided to give up basketball my senior year to focus on baseball. And after visiting Greenville in the fall, I fell in love with the school. I had a great tour with the school, and I'll never forget walking around, and they said, "Head coach wants to meet with you," which as an athlete, that's when you get the offer. Like, that's when it's coming. And so I go and I sit down in his office, and we're talking, and he goes, "You're the type of leader that we look forward to propel our program forward. You're the type of leader that we want in this locker room. But we don't know if you're quite ready to play yet. We're going to keep watching you, but that's all we can say for now." And it was kind of like, at the time, it probably felt like that commercial where the guy's dangling the dollar from the fishing line, and then as soon as somebody reaches, he pops it up. So you got to be quicker than that. That's kind of how it felt at the moment. But then, looking back, I was like, that coach basically said, "I haven't seen it yet. You're going to have to prove it." And which was my whole story, my entire life, was you always had to prove it. I had to work twice as hard to get on the field, 3 times as hard to beat everybody. And I remember that spring, after a great season, we ended up taking Quoin, the furthest it's ever been in baseball. We took it all the way to the state tournament. And right before the state tournament, they called and said, "Hey, are you ready to sign?" I was like, I was ready in the fall. but ended up signing with Greenville.
That's
and
awesome.
And went on to go there for my freshman year. And because of that, we kind of put things in the foundation on hold as far as the camp. We started a online forum using YouTube and Facebook to create tutorial videos and then answer questions from parents and stuff. But it wasn't the full purpose of the mission. And then going into my freshman year, everything was going great. Had a great fall. Felt like I was going to get a lot of playing time in the spring. Even had an amazing opportunity happen. My granddaddy called me up one day. He said, "Hey, boy, I got good news." I said, "Okay, what's that?" He said, "I got tickets tonight to Game 6 of the World Series. You want to go?" It's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, don't you have class?" I said, "I'll skip, granddaddy." And so we ended up going, and that was against the Texas Rangers in the 2011 World Series. And watch David Freese hit the tying run, and then again hit the home run to win it in extra innings and send it to Game 7. And I just remember the atmosphere and how amazing it was. And so when I got back the next day, and it's Game 7 that night, I'm sitting there in the dorm watching with a couple of my buddies, and we're like, we got to go. The Cardinals are just putting a thumping on the Rangers. We need to go right now. Like, this is something we have to be in the city to witness. And so we did. We drove there, and man, it was like something out of a movie. People fender bendering each other, yelling "Go Cards" instead of "Where's your insurance information?" Everybody was excited. There was people exploding from the stadium whenever it was done. I mean, it was a jubilation like no other. And then that next day, I woke up in my dorm room, and I didn't feel right. And I hadn't been drinking. I hadn't been doing anything wrong. The only thing I did was I had a couple Steak and Shake sliders, which maybe that could have contributed. But woke up in my dorm room, and I did not feel right. I felt really dizzy, really nauseous. I felt weak, and which was hard for me because I had just completed the Insanity Asylum Edition workout, which is one of the craziest workouts you can do. Is in the best shape of my life, but I felt super, super weak. So I did what any college kid would do. I called my mama. I said,
Your mom's been a big support.
She has been. She has been. I called her. I said, Mom, I don't know what's going on. I don't feel right. And my roommate, who was my catcher at the time, she said, all right, Michael, take his temperature, see what it is. And it was like 102.5 or 103. And she's like, okay. Mama's coming to get you. And so my mom drove an hour and a half from our home in Tamaroa all the way up to Greenville, picked me up, took me home, started feeling a little bit better the next day. And I got the thought in my head, Mama's home cooking's a lot better than the cafeteria food. Maybe I'll stay one more day.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad I did, because that next day I woke up and I couldn't pick my head up off the couch. I was in the best shape of my life, and I couldn't even lift my head. So my dad rushed home from work. He threw me over his shoulder like a bag of dog feed, took me up into the car, and drove me to Carbondale Hospital. When I got there, they told me I had a dangerously enlarged liver and spleen that needed to be hospitalized immediately. And that was the first of 2 weeks spent in the hospital, the first week in Carbondale and the second week in St. Louis University. In that first week, I ran fevers of up to 105 degrees. Had hallucinations, violent chills where it felt like somebody was literally standing over you and shaking. I had lost 20 pounds in that first week.
Wow.
They couldn't figure out what was going on. And so on day 6, they did a lymph node biopsy. And then after they got the results back from the biopsy, they sent me on to St. Louis University. And they called ahead with the results of the biopsy. And it was called acute multicentric multilymphatic Castleman's disease, which at the time in 2011, only 2 people were diagnosed with it in the United States, and it had a fatality rate or anybody within a few weeks to a few months.
Oh, my goodness.
And so here I was going from achieve my dream, doing what I love to do. Everything was going right. To now my life is over. And I'll never forget when I got up to that hotel or up to that room in the hospital, and we got checked in, and my mom's phone rang, and it was the doctor telling her the diagnosis. And I remember she hit her knees crying. And so I knew immediately this is not good. And then my dad leaned down to comfort her, and she told him what she had heard, and I saw my dad drop. And I had never seen my dad show emotion, like other than, if I got in trouble or if he was happy. Like I had never seen a sadness come from my dad. And so immediately I knew, okay, this isn't good. And then they told me the diagnosis, and I remember just laying there, and, whenever you're told your life is over, it's almost like a movie playing in your head. They always say, like, you think about the last few minutes your life plays before your eyes. But whenever you find out that you have a few weeks, a few months, your entire life literally plays as a movie in your head. and it's not always the best scenes. You know, it's for me at that time, I wasn't living to be the person I should have been. I was kind of egotistical. I didn't care who I was hurting. I kind of got that it was me mentality, that I did this and nobody helped me type thing. And I realized a lot of people I had hurt along the way, and I kept playing those scenes over and over in my head. And I felt like, I have to make this right. And so I was too weak to talk, but I was able to text. And so I started texting every single person that I had done wrong to and just asking them to forgive me, and that I was really sorry, and that if I do get another chance at this life, that I'll make it up to them, and I'll never forget that every single person texted back within 30 seconds. I was like, that's almost unheard of. I mean, heck, I could text my wife that I'm coming home and I won't get an okay until like 3 hours, And so like for that to be that instant, that was great. And then I knew I had to ask somebody else. And I said, God, I know that I haven't been living the best life, and I thank you so much for all the blessings you've bestowed upon me, for the families you've given me, for all the people you've placed in my path. And if it's my time to go, I want to go with you. But I promise that if you give me a second chance at this life, I'll live this life to serve you and to serve others. And that was on day 12. At that same time, which I didn't find this out until over a year later. At that same time, multiple churches across the country were having a prayer visual for me and praying for me to be healed. I remember having preachers that whole week come in and basically like prepare me for this. And I'll never forget waking up on day 14. After day 13 was my absolute worst numbers. On day 14, I woke up. I didn't have a fever. I was 40 pounds down, so I was skinny as could be. Didn't have a fever. I had an appetite for the first time. I was able to walk and go to the bathroom for the first time. And then after the doctors poked and prodded me like Texas barbecue one more time to see what the heck happened, they had to let me go home.
That's amazing.
And it's, that's why my faith is as strong as it is because I know having a strong faith and what he's done for me, and knowing that, one thing my dad always taught me, and I know it's taught to a lot of kids, is when you give somebody your word, you keep it. And I gave God my word that day. And so, fast forward to that summer, we held our first NubAbility camp, had 19 kids come from all over the country, and 7 coaches who I'd recruited via social media, which at that time was Twitter, I think it was Twitter and Instagram, and then there was a little bit of Facebook. But it was like messaging them, telling them the vision of NubAbility, and saying, "Are you in?" And all 7 of them were like, "Absolutely."
And how old were you at the time?
I was 19 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So it was, we had kind of connected, one of the coaches, for years, I would hear about this kid from Red Bud who was playing sports as well, if not better than me, was a great football player, great baseball player. And we were supposed to face off again so many times, and it never happened. But whenever I finally learned who he was, talked to him, he was one of the first people I reached out to. And then I reached out to a football player from the University of New York, Albany called, his name was Eddie Delaney, and he was like one of the top defensive ends in football at that time. And then I reached out to a softball player from a local junior college. Her name was Hayden Filson. Reached out to almost an Olympic gymnast level. Her name was Linnea Doring. And I had a soccer coach named Eric Westover. And I had a volleyball coach who played for Oklahoma City University named Nikki Nieves. And I reached out to him, told them of the vision, and immediately they're all like, we're in. And they showed up, and we had 19 kids show up for the first camp. And I was thinking, man.
And was that here in Southern Illinois?
That was actually at Greenville at that time.
Okay.
Yep. Had the first camp at Greenville. The school was so welcoming and opened up the dorms for our families to stay in, since there wasn't really a hotel in Greenville at that time.
And do those families come from all over?
They came from all over.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing to see 19 families. Now, fast forward to today, NubAbility has held. This all sports camp was camp number 70. We've served over 2,000 kids from 49 states and 11 countries. Still waiting for that Hawaiian kid. Still waiting for that.
Call out to Hawaii.
Yeah, call out to Hawaii. If you know of a limb different kid, he's got a full scholarship to
There
camp.
you
I'll even
go.
cover his flight. That's how competitive I am. But
Yeah.
and we've had camps in 17 states. We've held sport camps that have served through 23 different sports mainstream, and we also do snow sports as well as outdoors like hunting, fishing, archery. Any way that we can impact these kids and give them that courage and confidence to go out and do whatever they want to in this life.
It's so powerful. I mean, there are so many inspiring pieces that you have shared already. Tell me about, you mentioned your mom several times, and not only have the words you've spoken, will they be inspiring to other people and business owners, who may be listening to this podcast, just about not giving up. But also a lot of folks, they need that support system. And it sounds like you did such a great job of not feeling like you had to do it on your own. You had your mom, you had family, you had friends to support you, but you reached out to other people too. So talk about that support system and how important it was to making this a success.
Yeah, my family was a constant support system, and they talk about it today. There was so many times where when things got tough that in their hearts they wanted me to quit. They wanted something to come to take the love of the game away from me,
Because it was hard for them to watch all of the challenges.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And they didn't. They never told me that. They never voiced that to me. They didn't voice that to me until probably about 4 or 5 years ago, which to me tells me how powerful it was that they were like, he's got to push through this. He's got to endure it. And I think that all comes back to that scripture that they shared with me of I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which is tattooed on my arm. When I was a kid growing up, I wrote it on my baseball glove. I wrote it on my cleats, my hat. Everything just is a constant reminder that you can endure whatever's thrown at you. You just have to keep moving forward. And
Someone needs to hear that right now.
Yes,
no matter who they are.
Yes, ma'am.
That's powerful.
And then the other thing is, another saying that my mom said was God steers moving ships. So keep moving because eventually wind's going to hit your sails and then it's going to propel you forward. And so, just having that support that was constantly there, not giving me any excuses, not making it, Sam's difference is holding him back. It's just a difference. He can do everything everybody else can do. He can compete with anybody. He's going to go out and give his best effort every single time. He's going to work harder than anyone else. And then whenever he comes home, we're his safe space. I held my emotions back. Nobody at the school, nobody, none of my friends, nobody ever saw anything was getting to me, but my parents did. And they were that constant support. So the fact that they didn't have me quit and didn't tell me to quit, it just speaks even more and more to their character and to who they are as parents, because they had more reason to have me quit than anyone else because they had to see the part of me that no one else saw. And they've always been my safe space. Even to this day, if something is really, really bothering me and I don't want anybody else to see it, I don't want anybody else to know it's impacting me, I just go in with my parents and open up, them and my wife. That's it.
That's really great. So I feel like we typically have so many questions as part of this podcast, and you have really touched on so many of them already. But people listening, they may be a business owner, they may be overseeing a nonprofit. It just might be an individual who's listening. And of course, as I said, you've already shared a lot of inspiring things already. But what advice would you give to someone who maybe is at that brink where they just want to give up or they don't see how X business or X organization can work? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Did you wake up today? If you woke up today, know that every single breath is an opportunity. Every breath's an opportunity to do better. Every breath's an opportunity to get better. Every breath's an opportunity to make an impact. And every breath's an opportunity to chase your dream. Whenever you're given that opportunity to wake up, not everybody's given that opportunity. We don't know when our time's called. If you're still on this earth, if you have breath in your lungs, you have the opportunity to do more. And I hope that you'll continue to pursue it and value every opportunity. Because here's the fact. If somebody came up and said, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million, no strings attached, would you take it?
Of course.
Exactly, right? Hey, I'm going to give you $1 million, but your family can never see it and you can never breathe again. Would you take it?
No.
So you're saying that your life is valued at more than $1 million. So then why doesn't everybody live that way when they wake up? Right? That's how we have to live. You have to value your life. Know you have the opportunity to make a difference. Know you can go out and do whatever you want to in this life as long as you have the courage and confidence to go through failure and keep growing each day. Your failures aren't walls. They're not obstacles. They're the steps that you have to take to reach your success. So just keep climbing.
So I have lots of quotes, lots of Sam Kuhnert quotes now to share with other people. So Sam, we've talked about business owners, other individuals. Your work is mainly with kids, right?
Yes.
So what would you say to the kids out there?
Well, first off, I want to reach out to anybody who knows of any kids, limb different, highly mobile cerebral palsy, frozen limbs, amputees, anybody who is searching for that mentorship, searching for anything. Our policy at NubAbility is apply and receive when it comes to scholarships. We don't ask your financial information. We don't ask any of that because that doesn't matter to us. What matters is getting those kids in front of the mentor who looks like them so they can have their life impacted. And so if you know of a child with a limb difference, if you know of a child with an amputation, highly mobile cerebral palsy, or frozen limbs, please send them our way. We want you there. For those kids out there who are struggling and not knowing why they're through the storm, you know, I heard a quote a long time ago, and it's to be like the buffalo. You know, so often we're more like a cow. You know, when a storm happens, a cow runs away from the storm, which means that they're constantly in the storm. The storm stays on them the entire time. The buffalo turns and runs straight to the storm because the quickest path through the storm is to the storm. And so I would encourage you guys all to not turn away, no matter how hard it gets, to know no matter how much you think that you're going to be in this storm forever. Don't turn away and keep trucking through it because eventually you're going to get through that storm, and what's on the other side is something more beautiful than you could ever imagine.
So you mentioned scholarships. How is NubAbility funded?
And it's crazy. I mean, we have some amazing donors. We've got Heartland Coca-Cola, who covers a lot of our costs, especially through our all sports camp. We've got Dick's Sporting Goods, who gives us a grant here and there. Walmart Corporation this year gave us $20,000 to provide lodging, travel, and scholarships for families who couldn't afford to come to our camp otherwise. And then it's just donors peer to peer. You know, we live in the greatest community. And I honestly think, you know, I've traveled this country quite a bit for NubAbility and just through my personal speaking and everything. We live in the greatest community in this country. Southern Illinois is one that will roll up their shirt sleeves to help you in every way possible. And I don't think that I could do what I do anywhere else other than Southern Illinois. So most of our work or most of our funding comes from Southern Illinois. I mean, we have a lot come from families and family friends and families' businesses and other ways through peer-to-peer. But Southern Illinois has bolstered up this foundation and has continued to hold us up through the storms. I mean, I remember, as you do, during COVID, a lot of people are like, you know, how are people going to keep the lights on? How are we going to keep the doors open? And for us, I mean, I was literally sharpening up my resume, getting ready to do NubAbility full-time, 100% volunteer like I did when we first started, just so that NubAbility stays alive and I can go find something to put forth. And man, I've always said, you know, if you give God all of your problems, if you give him all your weight, the solution that comes is going to be more than you could imagine. And then immediately we had a grant come in and another grant. We were able to hold all of our camps. And we actually, me and my business director, Julie Gross, who's also my first cousin, we sat in an office after we weren't able to have our camp at Quoin during all sports because of what the governor laid out. And even though it wasn't our failure, it felt like a failure that we weren't able to get those kids together. And so we sat in the office for about 2 weeks running through different COVID mitigation tactics and came up with a 14-page COVID mitigation plan that we presented to 7 states, and we're able to hold 7 camps in 2020 during COVID.
That is incredible.
And that was,
And it's also a testimony to the entire theme and thread that's run through your story is that you just don't give up. You don't take no for an answer, and you don't let someone else dictate what you can and cannot do.
exactly. When you wake up, there's 2 things you're going to see. You're going to see your greatest support system, and you're going to see your greatest critic. And that's when you look in the mirror.
Wow. I mean, this, I said at the beginning, very excitedly, like I've been looking so forward to this interview and just hearing from you. But I'll be honest, I had no idea that it was going to be this powerful. I knew it would be powerful, but this has been really special, Sam. And tell us how, if someone wants to donate or support NubAbility, or if there's a kid or a parent who wants to get their kid involved, how would they reach out to you? How do they connect?
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, NubAbility.org, which is actually currently under reconstruction. We're having a brand new website developed. I'm really excited about it. It's been a dream of mine forever, where a kid can go and search by limb difference, search by state, search by sport, and they can find our coach who matches up directly with.
So by the time this comes out, that'll probably be in place.
I hope so. I'm
Okay.
hoping so. Fingers crossed
All
on
right.
that one. And eventually that'll grow to where they can find every tutorial that they want. So our website is huge. That's where you can donate. That's where you can find all that.
And what is the website?
NubAbility.org.
Okay.
Yep. And any contact, anybody who's looking to reach out for advice or help with sport or anything, you can reach out to me directly. I tell people all the time, that's what I was put on this earth to do. That's why God gave me a second chance. So you're not taking up my time. You're not stepping out of line by reaching out to me. I'm here to help as many people as I can until the good Lord calls me home, because I've seen how short life can be. And I want to live my life to the fullest and honor my commitment and deal with God as much as I can.
Sam Kuhnert, NubAbility, thank you so much. It has been a real treat and a real pleasure. And I appreciate you coming today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Deb.
All right.
We want to thank you also for being part of our Small Town Big Business podcast, especially our sponsors. So once again, thank you to Arcadia Wealth Group, Black Diamond Harley Davidson and RV, Fowler Heating and Cooling, the Swinford Media Group, Watermark Auto Group Foundation, Banterra Bank, and also Southern Illinois Now. Also want to thank Luke O'Neill at Union Street Arts for being our producer. And I want to let you know that if you want to reach out to Ethos Small Business Incubator, you can go to ethosmarion.org, where you can see almost 100 episodes of our Small Town Big Business podcast. So thank you again for joining us.
And don't forget to subscribe and like and all the good things to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform, or also on our YouTube channel. You can find it just by searching Small Town Big Business. I am your co-host for today, Deb Barnett with Southern Illinois Now, and you can find us at southernillinoisnow.org or on any of our social media channels.
I'm Russ Williams.
Have a great day.